Hello and a very warm welcome. So with this question, which you can see just behind me, I'm starting a new series on how to write answers for the main examination. And specifically in the segments which I teach, that is science and technology and environmental ecology. In the course of my recent offline batches in science and technology, I have come across this common problem with most of my students. They struggle to write a well composed, concise answer. Oftentimes, the introduction is too long, or the main body of the answer does not address the key query. Sometimes they give the examples which are not relevant. Sometimes the struggle is about how to conclude it. I'm trying to answer all these questions using this particular series. I know that a single video, a single question is not going to give most of the students the needed level of insight. Therefore, I thought of a series where I can systematically pick up the questions which I'm routinely sharing with my students, and then I'm trying to solve those questions based on my experience, what kind of answers have worked in the main examination. So without much ado, let us look at the question that I had given to my students, and then we will identify in what all parts the answer should be divided, and then in each part what we have to put. So the question goes as such. From a cyber security perspective, what constitutes the critical IT infrastructure in India? Okay, critical IT infrastructure in our country, what constitutes that? And obviously, this question was given as a part of my class on cyber security. And my students, if they have attended this class, they can very well relate to this question, because this is one question where I have received a lot of queries and lot of requests also if I can help with a model answer. So for all those queries, all those requests, and also in an attempt to reach a wider audience and help them, I am creating this video and a series of such videos. So well, coming back to the main discussion, this is the first query area which you have to address right in the introduction. After this, the question demands that why it is important to secure these systems. So that's the second part. Why it is important to secure these systems. The third part is outline the architecture of the cyber security setup in our country. So there are only three parts. Okay. How we are going to frame this answer? First, in the introduction, we are going to bring in the concept of critical cyber infrastructure or critical IT infrastructure. That will be our introduction. Second, in the body part, we have to deal with two subheadings. Why it is important to protect such critical infrastructure. And here we will do well by adding a couple of recent examples where the critical IT infrastructure of our country has come under attack. Second part that we have to deal with in the body is what is the architecture of the cyber security setup in our country. Then we are going to conclude this answer. So answer goes like this. Here, first and foremost, we are going to talk about the critical IT infrastructure. This part is our introduction. Let me just zoom it a little bit so that you can see it a little better. Now I hope it should be more clearly visible. So this is a longish introduction, but the point is there is no fixed rule. We generally create such artificial notions that your introduction or the beginning of your answer must be in one sentence, two sentences. But when the answer is being written on a question so obvious, so specific, like what constitutes the critical IT infrastructure, this is where you should be starting. And of course, this will be a longer one. So a long opening where We are basically trying to say that it encompasses the vital assets, systems and networks. These are three keywords: assets, system, and network. Assets will include the servers, the data stored in the servers, the proprietary softwares running those servers and running on those servers. Then systems, how do we feed the data, how do we analyze the data, so on. And networks of such assets and such systems. And of course, this will be both physical and virtual. Physical in the form of servers, computers, the physical devices to store the information and all that. And of course, virtual, the information that is stored in the cloud, the information that is moving from one part of the network to another part, so on. Okay. Crucial for a society's functioning. Notice, I'm not repeating myself, but I'm trying to pack all the relevant facts within my statements. Now, definition. There is no need to define or elaborate further. One of the common mistakes that we tend to elaborate within an answer that can at the most be 250 words. Even if you take some liberty, it can go into 300 words. उससे ज़्यादा तो आप नहीं लिख पाओगे. So, you don't have to do unnecessary elaboration. You have made a statement, now go ahead and substantiate it. That's what I have done here. Now, this includes sectors such as energy, transportation, water, communication, financial services like banking system, financial system, so on, healthcare, emergency, including the healthcare emergency, including the disaster management perspective emergency and all, food and agriculture, the functioning of the government, and overall technology. All of these, they make the critical IT infrastructure. Now, there is one thing that I have not mentioned here, but you must be knowing this thing from the conceptual point of view, and if possible, you should also be using it in your answer, and that is that in our cybersecurity system, the critical IT infrastructure can be owned by a government entity or can be owned by private entity. It is not so that only when an IT system, network, physical or virtual asset is owned by the government, then only it will qualify as the critical IT infrastructure's part, or else it would not be qualifying. That is not so in our country. Both government owned as well as privately owned come under critical IT infrastructure if any disruption in them is going to cause serious repercussions to the functioning of our society, to the national interests, to the well-being of Indians at large. Therefore, it is very, very logical to include the privately owned IT systems as well. This is something can if you can write, you write, or you can skip this part. The interconnectedness of these sectors means that a disruption can have widespread impact affecting public safety, security, economic stability, and public health. Another way to write the same thing, that you skip these parts, the interconnected part, and simply you write a disruption can have widespread impact affecting these, and forget this part. I'll change the color and I'll just mark the part that you can forget also. If you want to save words, time and all that. So all of this in blue mark can be skipped, and simply you can write a disruption can have widespread impact affecting these angles. I hope you are getting that in 3 sentences we have addressed the very first part of our question. What constitutes the critical IT infrastructure? Now time to move to the body part. And in the body, why it is important to safeguard them. And second part is, what is the architecture of cybersecurity setup in our country. Okay. Now, moving next. Significance securing IT infrastructure. That is the first heading within the body. So the very first heading was critical IT infrastructure. That is the introduction, or say the opening part of your answer. This is the second one. Significance of securing critical IT infrastructure. And here, not more than 5 points, but 5 most important points which will make it very, very pertinent for any society to safeguard the critical IT infrastructure, especially for an economy, for a nation as fast growing and as ambitious as our country. So, from the angle of national security, and why from the angle of national security? Because a whole lot of defense systems, defense labs, like DRDO alone runs so many labs across the country. Similarly, missile deployment, they are also governed remotely using critical IT infrastructure. So from national security point of view, first and foremost. Second, economic stability. The entire banking system, the entire stock market, or let's say the entire financial system, they are interconnected, and they are interconnected using IT network, and for economic stability of the country. Next is public safety, because in public safety comes emergency responses and all the transportation system, including the air traffic control. So we don't have to go into that specifics, but emergency response is one part and transportation system is another part. Next is public health. All the hospitals, all the patients' data, how the hospitals share information with other hospitals, how do they report the reportable diseases to the ICMR, so on and so forth. Everything depends on IT infrastructure. And for maintaining the optimal shape of public health, you need to have the IT infrastructure to be safeguarded. And lastly, continuity of essential services such as electricity, water, and all of that. Secure all these interests for a smooth functioning of the society, for the well-being of Indians in general, you need critical IT infrastructure to be safeguarded. If you wish, you can add many more points here. For example, functioning of the government departments. Seventh could be running of welfare programs. All right. All of these you can add. I have not added because I had to finish this answer in approximately 250 words. So somewhere you have to draw the boundaries. But if you wish, you can add these points also. And I will highly recommend that when you are attending these sessions, seriously, you should be making your own notes. Only that ways this video and more videos in this series will be meaningful to your preparation. Else it will come and one day it will evaporate and you would not be able to put this to the actual use in the examination. Okay, so we are done with the second part. Second part, just for the purpose of recall, this was the second part, and this was the first part of the body of the answer. Now the second part of the body, that is the third heading, right? So continuity with the importance. This is in continuity with importance. And here you do not have to go overboard with too many examples. But at least 3, 4, 5 examples will be more than enough for establishing how cyber attacks are being mounted against the critical IT infrastructure. So servers of the All India Institutes of Medical Sciences were attacked by an apparent ransomware system. Same went for the Safdarjung Hospital, then CDSL, Oil India, SpiceJet, right? So these attacks, they highlight the vulnerability of this critical infrastructure. Sets the ground for this sets the kind of platform for the next part of your answer, that is cybersecurity architecture in India. When I was seeing certain answers written by my students, they tended to write a lot about computer emergency response team of India or cybersecurity policy or cybersecurity strategy. The idea is give a tiny glimpse of everything. You can't forget, and I have covered that in a very short video also, that you can't forget that you have less than 10 minutes to write an answer and you have less than 260, 250 words to write an answer. Okay, so that is how much you have in your hands. So your answer has to be crisp, and your answer can be completed only when you recognize and act accordingly to the time and space constraints that you have got. So okay, so now these four form the most fundamental, the most crucial part of India's cyber security architecture. First and foremost, you have got what? You have got CERT in Computer Emergency Response Team of India. It is the national agency for computer security incident response. Second is National Cyber Security Policy, which basically creates a system of extensive guidelines of secure cyberspace ecosystem. Then in 2020, we created a proper strategy for a resilient cyberspace. And finally, the Ministry of Home Affairs is right now playing the central role in combating cybercrime. So contrary to the popular perception, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has a peripheral role, but since it is a crime and crime against India's larger interests, so Ministry of Home Affairs is the nodal ministry to deal with cyber offenses and large-scale cyber attacks. So cyber crimes through these bodies. And it oversees cyber and information security division. So that is the architecture. So do you notice that each part I am dealing in sufficient size with sufficient weightage so that I can fit everything together within the framework of an answer. The chapter could be much longer than this one, but this is an orientation into how to compress your knowledge, how to kind of certain parts, the unnecessary detailing part, so that you can come up with a precise and targeted answer. So this is your precise. Now the time has come to conclude your answer. Two sentences and this answer is well concluded. So finally we come to the conclusion part. There are things that you have to establish and how we have put together a great system to make our cyberspace secure. Two parts have to come in conclusion. So the first part goes like this. Integral to nation's security, economy and public welfare. That is part 1. Protecting it from cyber threats is crucial to maintaining national stability and security. And India's comprehensive cybersecurity framework plays a vital role. So this is the first essential point, this is the second essential point, and the sentence in between, if you want, you can junk this sentence as well. All right, and that ways you have been able to finish this answer within the prescribed space, and prescribed time. Did you notice that you did not need too many facts, as you would like to believe, to answer this question? Second, did you notice that how sentences and bulleted points have been combined in this answer to create a coherent flow? So a lot of students who are under confusion whether we should write in bulleted points or we should write in paragraph format, the answer is neither of them in isolation. You have to combine the two so that it looks like a well presented answer. If you now see, the first part runs with sentences, correct? The second part is bulleted points with description. The third part is something that you can write numbered list or just one or two sentences. Fourth part is again 4 points, each one explained in one sentence each, not more than that. And finally, conclusion in proper sentence format. That's it. Now, on these lines, you can try and solve more questions from these areas. I'm going to come back with many more questions in very near future. This is just the beginning of the series, and I hope you will find this series very, very useful to align your knowledge to the actual demands of the examination. So till we meet again, goodbye and good luck to all of you, and thank you for being in this session. Goodbye.